Council for February 24th, order at 3 p.m.
Please note, council meetings are streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with Section 17.2 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to foip@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. Just one quick piece before the meeting gets rolling. A quick public service announcement from the Town of High River that Canada won. So on that, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council adopt the agenda for the regular council meeting February 24th as presented.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. You have the motion.
All in favor? Carried. And previous meeting minutes, ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that council adopts the February 10th regular council meeting minutes as presented.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Bench signs on public lands. Sarah?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This report is a request for decision for a new proposed policy that is regarding bench signs on public lands. If the recommendation is supported, it will be the first policy that the town has had to specifically regulate bench signs. Currently, there are approximately 33 bench signs placed throughout the community. According to the town's records, none of these bench signs have received formal approval from the town of High River. This topic was discussed at the January 19th, 2015 Committee of the Whole meeting, and at that time, there were 19 bench signs that were counted around the community. It was determined at that time that administration should go ahead and proceed with a request for proposals process to retain a private company to run and operate the bench advertising for the town. According to the records that were found on file, after that 2015 meeting, administration spoke to the owner and broker of Century 21 Foothills Real Estate and had the following conversation. The owner and broker of that real estate firm stated that he, quote unquote, takes ownership of the bench signs. He also noted that he does not have any written documentation providing him with permission to place these bench signs around the town on public property. And further, he did note that he had verbally discussed the signs with Ron Weston, who is the former town manager, and who gave him permission, but he couldn't specifically recall when that occurred. There is no evidence in the town's records of the town giving any written permission to place these bench signs throughout the community. However, the request for proposals was not acted upon. Then the bench signs were discussed again at a subsequent Committee of the Whole meeting, this time in January of 2019. And to prepare for this meeting, administration conducted another inventory of how many bench signs were around the town. And at that time, 30 bench signs were found as opposed to just the 19 that were discovered in 2025. At that COW meeting, it was determined that the RFP approach may not be the most optimal approach to deal with this matter, because if the objective is ultimately to not have third-party advertising, to keep it in line with the land use bylaw, then it wouldn't make sense to go ahead with that. So based on the outcome of that discussion, there was generalized agreement at that time from members of council that the enforcement of the third-party advertising benches was not a priority at that particular time, so long as the number of bench signs did not further increase. Subsequent to the meeting, an email was sent out to the owner of that real estate company, again in 2019, noting the town's expectation that there be no further bench signs, and just an explanation of the current land use bylaw. In that email, he was provided a link to the Committee of the Whole report, and all of the photos of the inventory were located in that link as well. To prepare for this particular report, administration took photos again. This was in early 2023, and all of the benches that were found in the 2019 report, through the search, it appears that 3 of those original benches were removed. 4 benches have had their advertising removed, and there appears to be at least 5 new bench signs throughout the community. And throughout the signage enforcement process, and the town has been doing signage enforcement of all types of signs, specifically in 2024, 2025, and it continues now. Overall, there has been positive reception from the business community overall for taking steps to enforce all types of signs. However, there have been several comments of concern from the business community related specifically to these bench signs. Members of the business community, some of them in particular, have expressed concern that they want the town to address the bench signs in some capacity when dealing with signage enforcement to ensure that there is fairness and consistency across the board when dealing with signage enforcement. Some people mentioned that they would also like to put up bench signs, or they would like to have an opportunity to use bench signs, so they would just like to ensure that the town has some sort of fair and transparent process. Administration is recommending the policy that is before you today to allow the use of bench signs as opposed to a removal order, because administration does see the value in having these bench signs, because it gives an opportunity for local businesses and organizations to have an opportunity to advertise, and it gives us an opportunity to advertise local events. Many of the Century 21 benches do advertise local events in addition to the business itself. However, it is important to have a policy to ensure that the bench signs are strategically located on public lands and are equally accessible to any local business or organization, and has a fair and transparent process associated with it. The policy begins with explaining the intention of the policy. Intentions include ensuring that there is a policy, again, fair and transparent process, ensuring that the bench signs are available to any business or organization that legally operates within the town of High River. It's ensuring that the bench signs are providing a community benefit in terms of providing advertising opportunities for local community events as well as the business, and are strategically placed to provide a public benefit in terms of where it would be actually useful to have a place for people to sit. The policy then goes into discussing the process for existing bench signs on public land. If an existing bench sign is found to be of sufficient quality and it is in an acceptable location, the town will prepare an agreement to have the ownership of the bench signs officially transferred to the town. If the bench is found not to be of sufficient quality, or perhaps the location is unacceptable, the owner of the existing bench sign must remove it at their expense at a specified timeline. The owner of the bench sign as the next step, will be given first right of refusal to advertise their business organization, assuming it's legally operating in the town, for a period of 1 year. Once this 1 year term is complete, the bench signs will be available to rent, and I am using the term rent, but it is we are recommending that there be no fee, at least at the onset of this pilot project. And then a single business organization would not be permitted to rent more than 3 bench signs at a time after that initial 1 year term period. We specifically got that idea actually from the town of Okotoks. They did mention that one of their regrets for their signage policy is not having a limitation, because that does mean that maybe some businesses are getting a lot of them, and then there's no opportunity for newer businesses. Anyway, moving forward, the town will be taking responsibility for finding new sites. And the town will own all of the bench signs that are on public land. If a community member has a suggestion that they would like to put forward to the town as to where a good spot for a bench could be, they can certainly provide that recommendation. However, currently the number of approved bench signs on public land, according to this policy, is limited to 25. The number can be revisited as the community grows. At this time, like I said, administration is recommending no fee for the rentals. However, if the town determines in the future that there should be a fee, amendments to this policy and subsequently to the rate bylaw certainly can be made. If this policy is adopted and council is supportive of having some sort of financial consequence to adding more bench signs throughout the community, then the rate bylaw will just need to be updated, as placing bench signs on public property cannot really be considered a land use bylaw violation as it's occurring on public property. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Questions from council? Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mr. Snodgrass. Thanks, Sarah, for the presentation. In regards to the town taking ownership of these benches, is there a monetary transaction with the current owner, or we're just taking them? Because I'm assuming a business like Century 21 actually paid for the bench. Is that accurate? So I guess what I'm saying is I'm hoping that we're just not going to take it, that there's some kind of agreement in the sense of if we're taking ownership of them, that there might be some kind of compensation consideration in that transaction. I didn't read anything on that, so thank you.
Currently, as this policy is drafted, it is just that the town would be taking the bench, the ownership over from the bench. This is a topic that that CAO Prosser and I did discuss thoroughly. Did you want to add some more information on that?
We hadn't contemplated any direct compensation. At the end of the day, the goal would be the grandfather, the ones that are in place. I hate using the word grandfather, but leave them in place the way they are. Add that 50% component for community advertising and maintain that ownership until they decide to terminate that relationship through an agreement. And so they would get it in essence for free in perpetuity. And then if the bench decided to deteriorate and break down, it'd be our responsibility to replace that in the future, if that makes sense.
Can I follow up? Thanks. So let's take Century 21, for example, because that was kind of one of the outliers in this report. So the benches that they have advertising on right now, they would be grandfathered for those, and they wouldn't have to go through the application process for those benches. They could just maintain them with advertising indefinitely?
We would document them, and then we'd enter into those agreements with the terms of the policy, and then they would go up for RFP on that regular cycle, and they'd be allowed to bid on them. But right now, to try and correct the program, we have to give it some time to get into play, but we did not contemplate direct compensation for those benches at this point, but it's certainly something we can take back and consider if we want to make a payment to one of those vendors.
Well, I guess from where I sit, there's value in what that business put forward. There's been continuing value in what that business has provided to the community from their shared advertising of events and their business. Not to mention, not that there's not a lot of philanthropic people in this community, but Century 21 tends to be quite supportive of organizations in the community and whatnot. So I'm assuming we didn't have a conversation with them about that ownership piece. And I'm not saying that I want to write Century 21 a ginormous check for all these benches, but I wouldn't mind if there was a little bit of conversation with them in terms of it was their ownership. They invested some money in those, whether they were placed on town property or not, or partially on town, partially on private. That doesn't concern me, but there was an investment there. For the most part, I'm not displeased with where those benches are. Actually, I just drove by a location yesterday and a couple of young people were sitting there doing their thing on their phones and seemed to be enjoying the weather and sitting on a bench that was provided by Century 21. So, yeah, I don't know how the rest of council feels about that, but yeah, anyway, I wanted to bring that up because I think that is fair.
Okay, so it is absolutely not fair that you would not be compensating Century 21 or whoever owns any of these benches. You can't just take them. That's a hard no. We don't do that on our end. If you want me to compare it to cemetery plots. So you're also saying that in this bylaw, did I hear you correctly when you said that one business will only be allowed to have 3 bench signs maximum?
That's right, after the initial 1-year period where whoever owns the bench signs can continue on their advertising once they are under town ownership. We were saying that only, like, if a business or organization wants to rent some benches, they would be limited to 3. And that idea came from Okotoks. Because I thought it was a reasonable idea because they're experiencing where there are certain select businesses that seem to be getting a lot of the bench signs, and then there isn't an opportunity for other people to have that opportunity, and they don't necessarily want to just open up more bench signs in the community.
I'll hold my breath on the Okotoks mentality, but like Michael's absolutely right. These guys purchased benches, invested money, and put them there. They do great things in the community. If we are now going to own those benches, we buy them from whoever currently owns them, period.
Okay.
Like, I'm looking for council's agreement on that, but there's no way I can support that we just take something from somebody. So, and like I said, comparing it to cemetery plots, when somebody purchases a plot and then years down the road says, oh, I don't want it, I moved to Balzac and I'm going to be up there now, they can sell that back to the town for the original price they purchased it. And I'm saying you talk with Blair and say, look, how much did these originally cost you, and we'll purchase them from you. I've got issues with limiting it to 3 and then businesses coming back going, well, when's it going to be my turn? And, I agree there's a snooze you lose kind of piece going on there. I agree there's a term, okay, every 2 years they come up for RFP or bids or whatever, fine, but I don't know. If you want 19 and you're going to pay for 19 and you're going to give the town money for 19, well, away you go. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. 100%. If I buy something and the town's going to come along and take it away from me and not compensate me, that tastes real bad to me, real bad. Now, on the lighter side, Century 21 has been doing this all over town, and I appreciate them putting their benches out. And frankly, I don't think he gets back anywhere near what the investment has been. But he supports our event, the balloon event. He supports Show and Shine. He supports all kinds of events all over town. And he provides a place for us to sit. So now we start putting a policy like this in place, and we get businesses say, I'm not going to get involved in that. Why am I going to get involved in that? Now we don't have benches. Next thing we know, we got people coming back, we need to buy benches. And on and on and on it goes. And we're talking about limiting it from, right now you said there's 33, and we're going to cut it back to 25. So we're going to go to Gordon and say, hey, you bought these, but you have to take them back and put them in your front yard. That's what I read here. And I was just looking at his sign. I sent it to Craig over here, the one that's out front of his place. And what it says, life is better at High River, Alberta. That's on his bench sign. What's wrong with that? Anyhow, that's my comments.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Actually, in one of the letters, it does say that it would be at a mutually agreed upon price. So that was obviously a discussion at some point, because it does say that in one of the letters.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's zero. That's my problem.
I don't have a whole, I don't have a whole lot of problems with his benches. I do feel if we are considering doing a policy, having something on town land, it would be a good idea to have that agreement. And if it's to 25 benches that we feel that there's a few in places that shouldn't be, that's fine. Limiting it, he's taking care of them. I don't think they look terrible if something did, right? I think that would be fixed. But if there are people interested in bench signs, could we not try it, get 5, 6, 7, 8 bench signs and put them, or benches in town, and see if people are even interested in the program? I don't know. Is there a way to test the program itself before we make huge waves in having these all removed and causing an issue with benches I don't see a huge issue with?
Yeah, and certainly we can acquire some similar type benches and put them up for RFP if that's what council chooses. When we had brought this back originally to enforcement, because this was an enforcement issue previously about trying to solve the problem because they were starting to pop up, we were directed to come back with some kind of policy, some kind of framework that would make fairness and consistency the approach, and that it recognized the investment that those benches that already are out there are reflected. We have a couple of the benches that are on private property. Some of the ones in the pictures are located on private property. We're not overly worried about those. And there are a couple that are in other locations that are actually crumbling that have to be fully replaced. At the end of the day, there's some variation in the number, and I think it's understanding exactly what that inventory is. We had, like I said, the reason why we didn't put a rental fee in there was we had not envisioned compensation. We were envisioning a free program for those businesses and reflect for a contribution to the community. And so if we missed that through our conversation with council, then that's my fault. That's my apologies for that. We were looking at just a way to monitor and a way to grow the program with a fair and consistent approach with no rental fee or anything along those lines for the use of that public right-of-way. But certainly if there is a compensation framework, then we should talk about what a rental framework may look like.
Councillor Walsh?
Thank you. The number that you have, a couple of numbers in your report, we had 19 at one point, then all the way up to 33. May I ask how you came to the final number?
It was just visiting the community, taking photos, and adding it all up.
And so once the existing benches are assessed, do you think many will have to come out, or will be at around 25? Just their condition and location?
I think there are a couple that are on private property. I'm not entirely sure how many, maybe like 4 or 5. And then, like Chris Prosser said, there are a couple of them that are not in good condition. And I can think of at least one that I think is in an inappropriate location in terms of sight lines and people turning.
Right. And then I think you're off to a great start for trying to have some level of organization around this. It is a unique thing that we need to manage better. I am in agreement with the rest of council that it would be nice to offer some type of compensation. Yes, he's been doing this forever, and I believe was part of the conversation, he being Blair, working together with us, right? So, yeah, I think that, offering some type of compensation for his investment, and of course expressing our gratitude for all that he continues to do. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
So for council, if we could ask them to table the motion and send it back to staff for a little bit more work, we'll bring back a revision that reflects the compensation framework and what that may look like.
So I'll make the motion that council table this policy POL 0087 to the next meeting in order to have updates to the number of signs per businesses, updates or options. Number of signs per business, compensation amount for bench purchases, and how many years per contract? Like if we do this and you say, well, you get the bench by Service Credit Union for how long? I don't want to be doing this every year. Like, do they get a 3 or a 5 year? What's in here?
I was thinking 2 years. We could go higher.
Yeah, let's go higher. We don't need to be doing this if they give them up in that time. But
Make it the first item that every new council has to.
Jesus, yeah, first item in your orientation of council. And so every 4 years, November 1st, make them regret it right out of the chute. And then we can choose what boards they go on. No, it's fine. I got it. So yeah, we're tabling this motion just to get clarity on a few of those things, Sarah, please. Motion's on the floor. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I think in your motion you said next council meeting. I would like to rephrase that to a future council meeting. Give administration some time to do this in depth.
Okay, that's fine. Future council meeting, friendly amendment accepted, as long as it's before Kinghorn's done. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Nychuk, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I just want to make sure, Sarah, you got enough from us. Does that give you enough context to go back and refine and then visit us again in the future? Anything we need to clarify?
No, I think that gives us enough. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. I am all in favor of this policy, but we talk about this every 2 or 3 years for the last 12. FCSS grants. Shelley?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As this may be my last opportunity to speak with you this term in an FCSS capacity, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for supporting the work of Preventive Social Services. This program, as you know, is unique to Alberta, and it is a program to be proud of. The funding model works, and we are reducing risk factors, and we are increasing protective factors. We're invested in local autonomy, which means local programs for local residents, which is really important, especially as a rural community. And our partnerships are making a difference. The recommendation before you today allows us to play a small role in supporting the lives of children and youth, in supporting families, including dads, in increasing awareness of healthy and safe relationships. We are helping to reduce isolation. We're connecting people to each other and to the community. We are investing in and supporting volunteerism, and we are helping the folks during some of their most challenging times. It is more than just simply approving allocations of funds. It's helping to improve the lives of people who live in High River and call High River home. So thank you. This is the fourth time that these recommendations have been in front of you during your time here with us. And the applications before you today, there was actually 17 in total. It was our highest dollar amount in requests, $229,844 in requests in those 17 applications. We were able to fund some of those and most of those. However, we had $75,000 in allocations. And so the task force had a difficult decision. And to help them with their decision, we made sure that the programs that receive funding were helping us to meet our mandate as FCSS as laid out by the province, and that meets our local community needs. They were meeting a community need and helping us address the needs of our most vulnerable in our community. We were looking at those that supported collaboration, and also looking at those that provided direct service to the residents here in High River. So I present to you the 2025 FCSS Community Grants as recommended by our FCSS Task Force, which thank you to Councillor Walsh, Councillor Jones, and our senior leadership team. And that is that we recommend $10,000 for BGC Foothills Clubs, $5,000 to Christ the Redeemer School, in particular for their Family School Liaison Program, $1,650 for the Foothills Community Immigrant Services, $8,850 for Country Hospice, $5,000 for Foothills School Division for their Family School Liaison Program, $10,000 towards Inclusion Foothills, $6,000 for Rowan House, in particular for their Preventive Education Program, $2,000 for Solace Grief Support, $3,000 for Wellspring, and for Wild Rose Community Connections, $15,000 towards Dad Connects, and $8,500 towards their volunteer program. I'm happy to address any questions or concerns that you may have.
Thanks, Shelley. Any questions from council? It's a yearly thing that we fully support. So, Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Shelley. I've gone through one of these where you do the evaluation and you hear from all the people and their needs, and it's an unbelievable experience, and it's probably one of the toughest things I've ever done. So I want to say thank you to you and your team and everybody that sits at that table and comes up with these numbers for us. It's a really tough thing. And thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks to the task force.
Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shelley, for this. This is great information. One question I do have is, how long have we had the $75,000 as our grant?
This is only our second or third year that we were at 60 about 3 years ago, and we did receive a small increase from the province. That increase was around the $15,000 mark, and so we put that through to council in a budget that did go to the community grants, that we didn't take that for our internal programs, that we did put that out to the community programs. So I believe this is year 3 of it being at 75.
Okay. How often do we come back to revisit that number? Is that something council decides, or is it all external source money?
I think the challenge for us, and I don't want to, if CAO Prosser has something to add, but our challenge is a bit with our funding models that we need a increase from the province. It's an 80-20 split funding model. So as soon as the province increases our funding, that allows us as a municipality to increase our funding as well, if we're able to do so, and that allows us to then allocate more funds. So any advocacy work you can do to promote this work within the province would be greatly appreciated, because that is where we see it. We haven't seen an increase in funding for a number of years, so we're always happy to see us in the budget, that it's not reduced and not removed, but an increase would be welcome.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions. Thanks, Shelley. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Council approve the allocation of the 2025 FCSS community grants as recommended by the FCSS Community Grant Task Force to come from the 2025 FCSS budget as follows. I'm not going to repeat them because Shelley did a fantastic job for those that are on YouTube to know what they are, but they are in the agenda package. So as presented by Shelley.
You have my motion, Mayor?
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you.
Third-party agreements, flood mitigation grants. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. This is one of the final agreements of sending the memorandum of understanding with Foothills County to transfer some of the remaining flood control or the flood remediation works that the town had received since 2013. We're getting close to the end of all the rehabilitation programs, and we're getting the final statements of financial expenditures approved by the province, and so we feel comfortable in recommending the 7.5 be transferred over, or up to 7.5. We still have some outstanding invoices that we're still reconciling with the province when it comes to the Southwest berm and the property acquisition from the appeal board decision. So we still have that outstanding that we can't transfer that full amount over, but the initial funding would see almost $4 million, just under $4 million transferred over in the first SWAC of cash, and we'll get them going while we continue the reconciliation with the province and their final approvals on our statements. And that's the rationale for the recommendation.
So you're saying we have 4 million available today?
Correct.
And we may have another 3.5
Correct.
in the future.
Correct.
So you're just asking for a motion that for up to 7.5,
Correct.
right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
That's where it's. Yeah, this is unfortunate because the county had, if I remember right, the province had given them money, or they were going to give money to them for the compensation for downstream Highwood River landowners. Then in about 2020, I think it was, the province pulled that funding from the county, refused to give them anything further, and just said, go get it from High River. So that's the pickle they were put into, that we're more than happy to do this if it's unused money and we're done all our mitigation, and that's what the whole delay was, is making sure that, because we're not going to give ours up until, if this is the way the province was handling this, we're not going to give ours up before we got all our projects done. So I appreciate the split that we're going to give the 4 million now and hang on to 3.5, just to make sure that we can get our projects done. So Councillor Kinghorn?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Should the motion be for the 4 now and then the 3 is for a future council, or do you want to put it all through now?
Yeah, I'm wondering if
I'm a little.
That's exactly what I'm thinking as well.
Thank you.
If we can guarantee them 4 right now, then let's do the 4.
Yeah, we'll leave that up to council. Like, we are close. We're just waiting for the final sign off from the province on our statement of financials, but we can bring that back for the last 3.5 at any point in time.
Okay. Thank you. So on that note, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Jones, the council direct administration to share town flood mitigation grant funding with Foothills County to support the Lower Highwood Flood Risk Mitigation Program totaling $4 million, and that council authorizes the CAO to finalize and execute the third-party agreement with Foothills County.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. There's one particular county councillor that will be very, very happy to hear this. Yeah, he's probably out there somewhere, clicking his heels. Councillor board committee reports. Anybody? See none. Any public comments? See any? Council correspondence requiring action. There's a ratification letter of support for Narrow Road Home Society that I signed last week because it was time sensitive for one of Narrow Road Home's employees to get an extension on her working visa out of the States. So we were happy to provide, because a couple of us know Megan a little bit and we're more than comfortable in doing this. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk. The council approved the mayor to sign the letter of support for Narrow Road Home Society's request to extend the working visa of Megan Schmidt prior to the council meeting.
We'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Correspondence regarding water license on the Highwood. Riley? Your name's on it. Okay, good.
Bear with me. I have some notes in case there was questions.
Yes.
Ready?
That's my answer.
Yes, you want to pursue it?
Yeah, I think so.
Would you
Go
like to
ahead.
know the pricing and numbers and pros and cons?
I know the pricing probably, but go ahead.
Sure. So it's 44 acre feet. We periodically get these inquiries where people will phone us up and say, hey, are you interested in license? Do you want to pursue this license? Historically, we've said the town is not interested. Given the recent conversation and the correspondence request to have this shown to council, we included it in correspondence. What's presented is 44 acre feet. The transfer would be for likely 39.6 because there's usually a 10% clawback on these when they are transferred. That means, hold on here, I have some numbers. It would be, so assuming the total license, the person who proposed it was talking about half or partial or whatever. It's not very big to begin with. If you're going to go for it, I say go for the whole thing. It is 285 people that it would supply at our current consumption rates. 44 acre feet is what you would have to buy. An acre foot, rough market value right now is $8,000 per acre foot. That means it's $352,000 to purchase it plus transfer fees. Transfer fees, assuming zero complication, would be in that $5,000 to $10,000 range. Any complications would drive that up beyond. It is small, and in comparison to the aquifer and the aquifer study, probably doesn't have a huge impact. And then lastly, you have to keep in mind it is an agricultural license. So it comes with all sorts of restrictions in terms of usage that a municipal license does not have, particularly around seasonality. So as an example, when the county bought agricultural license, they're now having to build a raw water reservoir to go with it because it can only be used at certain times of the year. Whether you could schmooze that over and massage it given the size of our other license, I'm not sure. That's not something we've never really encountered. But so that's the Coles notes.
I still think it's worth investigating further. $8,000 per acre foot, but these licenses are becoming more and more valuable every day. I think any opportunity that we have to, it's obvious this guy wants to give us first right of refusal on it. I think it's worth pursuing. honestly, regardless of the restrictions that are currently on it. I know the government is looking at changing some of that stuff too, so who knows what it looks like in the future. But whether it's 22 or 44 acre feet, yeah, you got to give the 10% back, even though you have to purchase the 10%, and then you got to give the 10% back, right? So yeah, it does put it up in probably in words about 10,000 an acre foot, which I think is, I've heard of that number and more being purchased in the past. So that's my thoughts on it. Just, I don't need to make a motion on it today, I don't think. I think just if you guys want to go back and get some.
No, well, we can go back and ask them for a proposal on the full thing, and then do some due diligence on our part, and then bring it back to council as a report.
Yeah, but I think you're right that it's a small amount. So if we are going to go for it, we want it all.
Yes.
And even if it's just banked in our books, there's value to it. Huge. Any other questions from council? No, Chuck?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to touch on the reservoir part, so that'll be something you bring back in the report, Riley?
Sure. Now,
You said basically tied to this, we'd have to have a reservoir as holding capacity for the license so we could use it
correct.
365.
Correct. Now, I guess the question would be, is there ways to work around that? Could we use this as, it is currently an agricultural license, could we use it to, we do irrigation work, can we tie it to that? And can we meter some things separately?
Yep.
That I don't know. I've never been that involved. Also, keep in mind, we had, I think, what was the last report? Said we had enough water for 40 some years. So we're not going to run into that water reservoir if we say we're going to use this at the very, very last end. So we do have some time before that becomes urgent. And by then, perhaps the licensing structure has changed, or we've got more license where it makes sense to build that reservoir.
Thanks. Yeah, in 40 years, the Alberta government might pull everybody's license and say nobody owns them because they have that in their pocket as it sits right now, so.
Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mayor. Riley, can we also find out from him, you might have just answered it, I might have missed it, I'm trying to think of how to frame it, the status it has. Like, for instance, Highwood Golf and Country Club has their licenses, I think, from 1958, somewhere in there. So they have somebody from 1962 is going to lose their water license prior to the one that owns it from 1958.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I will ask. I know what you're asking.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying,
I'll ask.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good? Thanks, Riley. Council correspondence for information, the invite to the annual Diamond Valley Parade. Any other questions, concerns before we end? All good? Meeting adjourned, 3:48 p.m.